To cast a finger, we're going to use some little Dixie drinking cups. We're going to need 2. You can take and draw a line about halfway. All the way around like that, and then we're going to take a razor blade and we're going to cut that. Because we're going to cast our finger just like that. This way we don't use a whole lot of alginate, and it gives you a basic idea of how to cast a finger. Now we're going to hot glue these 2 pieces together. Let that dry, and then we'll start casting our finger. Alright, I tested it. My finger doesn't go down all the way, so that's a good depth for my finger. We have 2 of these small Dixie cups full of water, and 2 Dixie cups, 1 full and 1 half full, and that's what we're going to use for our little finger mold. So I poured them both in. I'm going to pour 1 cup of water in first, stir it up, see how well it looks, and add another half of cup and stir it just to make sure it's not too runny and not too thick. And 1 1/2 is ideal for what I need for right now. Press it against, when I mix it, I don't just stir, I actually press it against the side of the cup, breaks up all the little powder balls that are in there. And then you pour it into your Dixie cup finger mold that we're going to be using. Got to work fast. I only got like a 3-minute time on this. Okay, I filled it up pretty nice. Now, put your finger in it. You move it up and down, turn it around, because you want to get all the air bubbles away. Okay, nice, it's overflowing a little, which is just fine. And now I'm going to sit here for about 3 minutes. Actually, I'm going to set this down on the table so I can just relax. So I'm going to set it there, and I'm going to wait 3 minutes, 3-4 minutes, when I can touch it here and it doesn't come back on my finger, and it's kind of firm, then I know that it's done. And don't move your finger. If you move your finger, you'll damage the detail inside. You'll tear the alginate, because when it starts to set, it starts to solidify slowly, and at that moment it's very critical with the detail. So if you move your finger around, if you start going like this, you're just going to ruin the detail. So hold real steady and just leave that finger in there. Okay, now when I lift this up, see how it stays firm now and rubbery? Right there? That shows that it's set. It's ready to pull my finger out. So now to get your finger out, there's a little bit of a suction in there because of your finger. So you want to kind of wiggle it a little bit. Try not to damage it any when you're wiggling it. Just kind of pull it away slowly. Just take your time. It's a very nice mold right there. Now what we're going to do is another alginate mold of this. You don't want to pour plaster in here, because if you pour plaster in here and you have a plaster finger, then that plaster finger, you want to make a plaster mold, you're going to have to do a 2-part mold. There's no way you're going to get that finger out. So we're going to do an alginate finger that we can put in a cup, fill it with plaster, and then pull the alginate finger out, and we'll have a perfect finger. You never use your finger in plaster to make a plaster cast of your finger. You will burn your finger, and because of your knuckles, you won't get it out of the mold. It'll just be really hard, and you can get 2nd and 3rd degree burns because that plaster, when it's curing and setting, it is super hot. So we're going to make now an alginate finger out of this. Now we're ready to pour some alginate in this finger. I probably don't need this much, so I'm going to start with probably a half a cup, because it's just my finger size, so I don't need a whole lot. And I'll try about 3/4 cup of water to start and mix it. Now this alginate, I'm going to actually make it soupier. because I wanted to get it in there and get the impression really well and not worry about it being so thick that I get air pockets underneath it. So I'm actually mixing it quite soupy. Almost an entire Dixie cup with a half of a cup of alginate. And I'm going to put it in here. And I'm pouring it off to the side a little bit so it'll run down and get inside there. And I'm actually going to take a thinner popsicle stick and push it in there. I want to get all the air bubbles out of there. So I'm going to move this in here. I'm trying to be careful not to touch the sides. I just want to get it in there and get all the air out that I can. So I don't think I have any air, which I haven't seen any come up. So I did pretty good. And then I'm going to top this off. Now I didn't use a mold release because alginate doesn't stick to alginate unless you use super glue. So I'm just going to go like that and leave it in there. To get it out, I'm actually going to take a Q-tip. I'm going to kind of pull the stuff a little bit just to kind of make it a little bit looser. And I'm going to mix it, some alginate in it to make it sticky, and I'm going to set this in there just like that. That will help me to pull it out of the mold when it starts to set. Okay, so now I'm going to let this sit. Okay, it's set. Now we're going to peel it out. Like I said, alginate doesn't stick to alginate. So we should be okay to pull it apart. If you try and lift the finger out, it might damage it. So my best thing I do is just take the mold apart and slowly tear your finger out. You don't want to really cut this alginate because you might cut your finger. I mean cut the alginate finger. So the best thing to do is to tear the alginate. And having a paper cut makes it a little easier too. And you just slowly tear the alginate till you get your finger out. That is a beautiful finger. So now we're going to take this and we're going to glue this into a bottom of a plastic cup, an empty cup. Don't pull this out because you will actually tear the alginate. So the best thing to do is to cut it with a pair of scissors. I'm going to cut that so it'll stand straight up in the mold. If you want, you can get rid of some of this if you want. If you get it, the best way of getting rid of it is don't cut it, is to tear it, because then it looks like a wound, you know. So there's the finger. Now we're going to stand that up in a plastic cup and glue it down. Now I got the finger, super glue, and a plastic cup. I'm just going to glue it down just like that inside. So just to make sure there's no moisture, dab it on a paper towel, take your super glue, put your super glue on it like that. And if you have long nails, it will probably not work. You'll notice it when you pull the mold out that your nails are damaged. So I just want to warn you, if you have long nails, it may not work as well for you. Stick that in the mold. Make sure it's not touching the sides anywhere. And you are now ready to pour plaster in this. Now I'm ready to mix my plaster in. When I pour plaster in this cup, it's going to fill it pretty high, and if I don't have enough, I can always mix more quickly. What I'm using is Hydrocal white. You can use Ultracal if you want. I do not recommend Plaster of Paris. It is a low-end quality plaster that is not sufficient for this kind of molding. It's very brittle and you will lose all your detail. We're going to mix the plaster to a pancake batter consistency, kind of a thick pancake batter. It's kind of what I use in all my videos. I tell people, just so you kind of get a reference for how thick it is. This might be a little thinner than pancake, but around that consistency. And now You're going to pour it in, nice and slow, around it. Just make sure you, and I'm even pouring it on it, that'll try to break up all the air bubbles. And you want to go to about 1 inch over the finger. So that's my goal, is to get over about 1 inch, which is, this is a perfect amount. Excellent. If I needed more plaster, this plaster takes about 1.5 hours or so to set, depending on the temperature. It's kind of cool in my shop. So I'll have about 1.5 hours working time if I wanted to, 1 hour. So if I need to mix more plaster because I didn't have enough, then I would just mix some more up and then pour it in. But looks like we're pretty good. Now I'm going to let this sit until it's set, and then I'll have a plaster mold of a finger. Okay, it's ready to go. There's the finger. It looks like a really nice mold. Very nice. So there's our finger mold. I'm going to cast 8 fingers at a time. To continue learning about creating severed fingers, please watch the next videos in this series. Casting multiple fingers, and the final video on creating latex fingers and painting them. Okay, sides are smoothed off. We're ready to make some fingers.